Welcome to Rhythms That Restore. I'm your friend Cherisse that's ready to journey beside you. Let's learn rhythms that can restore our minds, hearts, bodies, and spirits, and allow us to walk confidently in who God has called us to be. Are you ready? Pull up a chair. Let's get started. Hey everyone, happy December. We are channeling our December vibes here in Memphis. I actually have a sweater on, but I have my air conditioning on. But I had the heat on this morning. Yep. But we are so glad you guys are here. Thanks for pressing play and pulling up a chair with me. And Allison is here at the house in the studio, our professional studio.
I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're so professional around here that I have the microphone sitting in a cup.
You didn't have to tell anybody. They wouldn't know.
We just want you guys to know. But we're so great and excited that Allison is here. I have been waiting for a few months.
Yes. Very patient.
To have you here. And I'm so excited. And I really think that as I was preparing for today, I was like, this is so perfect that you would be here and be available for the December 1st episode as we're kicking off the holidays.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no one better than Allison who is, I mean, I know all the things for you, but you said it best. You said, where's the word? Where is it at? Oh, Allison considers herself a quiet pursuer.
Yes.
I love that. I was like, can I add that to it? But I love that because that's who you are as a person in your heart and your soul. But you also really are like a purveyor of the holidays with your business and making cakes and bread and sweets.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a perfect way.
We look forward to pretty much October on all year long.
Yeah.
And we're always looking for some fun ideas or new ways to put a spin on a kind of a classic flavor because people typically they're here for it. They come out for the holiday flavors and it just makes us so happy.
We just need the weather to participate.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah. If y'all are listening or you're watching us on YouTube, you're like, what are you guys talking about? So Allison LaRue is my friend and my guest. And she is also the owner of Small Cakes Bakery here in Memphis, Tennessee, Collierville, Tennessee. But has many gifts.
Oh, I don't know about that, but that's the big one for the holidays. We'll go with that one.
Yes. And as you guys are going to get to hear too. So Allison is a wife, a mother to,
well, we have four, but only 3 are still in the house. So
I can't even believe that.
I know.
I know. And what are their ages now?
11, 13. And then Hannah is 25 and she still lives at home. And then Matt is 23 and he is on his own.
You guys.
I know.
Man.
It flew by.
Right. So you have the teenage years now and then
which are so fun.
Isn't it? Young adult ages too.
Yes. Yeah. It is the gamut. But I tell my teenagers that their brother prepped me for them. So they don't get away with much, but they're girls.
Right. That's going to say
it's a little bit different.
I don't know, except for I was a teenage girl, but my house is all boys all the time. Everything.
It is. We have lots of friends who have all boys, and it's fascinating to see the dynamic that is. It's some of the things are so similar, and then some things are just completely different. It's fun though. It's a good balance.
Yeah. So wife to Terry.
Yes.
You guys have been married for how many years?
It'll be 15 in December.
15 years.
I know.
Okay. Tell us that story in a second.
Okay.
And then mom and then business owner. And I'm saying business owner because when I met you, you guys owned the food truck.
Yes.
You owned Say Cheese food truck. And that's probably been over a decade ago.
Yeah. We started in 2015. And then when COVID hit, we stopped. So we have been out of that game it'll be almost 5 years. Which is crazy to think about.
Man, it's flown by.
And that was a whirlwind in itself. And it was so fun. And we wouldn't trade it for anything. But it was so much work.
Yeah, it was.
It was a lot.
Tell us that story in a second. So I'll finish your bio. Wife, mom, business owner, and a quiet pursuer of gardening, crocheting, sourdough, bread baking, longtime Memphian, and an introvert to the core.
Yeah. All of that is very true.
And you are very much stepping out of your comfort zone to be here today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
and officially welcome.
Absolutely. Anything for you.
I know you've been to my house many times, but this is the first time for us to like,
Yeah.
do a podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm learning. You guys are all teaching me. I know when you said, Cherisse, you're going to come over. I'm like, sure. I'm going to figure out how to have guests here.
Have you always done it?
Yeah, virtually.
Well, I don't have this great of lighting, so this was a selfish decision on my part.
Hey, I love it. When we built this office, like I had no idea because it was during COVID.
Yeah.
Like nobody was coming over.
Sure.
And now I'm like, I get to have friends over.
Yeah.
Now I got to figure out like how to make it more like podcast friendly for my friends.
I love it.
I know.
I love those doors.
Yeah.
Nobody can see those doors, but I love those doors.
And y'all come over. Except normally I like and I had tea out for you and everything. So you guys look, Allison brings me an entire box of cookies, snickerdoodle.
Yeah.
Thanks. They're
for the season.
Oh my gosh. And this is what I was most excited about. An entire loaf. Can I show them?
Yeah.
Of sourdough bread. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Which we'll talk about this, but I want to learn how to make that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a thing and everybody wants to know how. So, but one of the things I thought is so perfect as we are in December, and I was just talking to Allison about this before we started, but how can, so we've all flipped the calendar. It's officially December 1st today. I'm speaking to myself.
Panic mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, how can this year be different? I did this to myself for October. Also, I was like, cool, new month. And I flip October. I'd already filled it up. I was like, really, Cherisse? You talk to your friends about having like these lovely spiritual rhythms of
slowing down.
And I do it. Yeah, I did it to myself. And so like maybe as we're talking today, like,
okay,
what can we do? Not that we figured it out, but right.
My disclaimer is I'm probably the wrong person to ask because my time is so sacred.
Yeah.
And part of that is me being an introvert. It is physically draining for me I like people. I like being around people, but I have to have a limit, because I need to recharge. And I mean, my youngest, who's now 11, when she was 2 or 3, she would have like a play date and she would just disappear. And I was like, I think she's self-regulating. I think she's like, okay, I just need a minute. She wasn't upset. She wasn't frustrated. And then she would come back to the party and she was fine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. I just have an adult responsibility that I can't just disappear. So for us, for our family, December we have a blended family. So there's always scheduled time that is, family time. And then there's scheduled time that's sort of just the 4 of us, where the 2 older kids are on their own or with their mom. So there is some time that is absolutely packed and there's nothing that we can do about it. But I don't know. I don't stress about the holidays. Like this year, we're not even putting up a tree because we're going on a trip and we have a kitten, and the thought of leaving a house sitter with a kitten and so we talked about it as a family and we're like, hey, this is a year that we're going to have to skip it because it just doesn't make sense. We're leaving on the 26th. It doesn't make sense. So that immediately unloaded some stress of like, just not having the decorations that we feel like we have to put up. If those bring you joy, do it. But I think sometimes so often it's for the picture or for the party or somebody's coming over instead of like, oh, a Christmas tree makes me happy. So I'm going to, put it up.
Right. Like how many holiday traditions do we all have?
Honor.
Yeah. But we're doing it because we should do it.
Right.
Or because somebody did it before us. But like, do we really ever pause to go, do I like this?
Right.
Do I get joy out of it?
Yeah.
And if not, then why are we doing it?
Yeah. And I think, when you start a new family, you get opportunities to carry on the traditions that you loved or that are nostalgic. And maybe you only do that for a season. And then you create your own, or I don't know. But we decided that we're not doing a tree. And so we'll probably have very minimal decorations out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For this year, I think just giving yourself grace and just being like, you know what, this doesn't have to be the norm. I can't do it this year, or I'm choosing not to.
Right.
So I don't know.
There's a lot of freedom in that too. And I think that as we're speaking to women and men and students that are listening, and we also have a lot of business owners that listen too. How do you guys, as very busy parents, And as business owners, like, how do you find that you place boundaries around your time so that you can be on when you have to be on, but be off so that you can recharge?
Yeah, that's tricky. And I think it's easier for me because I do have one child who is confirmed introvert, like her mom. My husband is not, though. So that is a tricky balance. I have found that, having people to our home makes me more comfortable than going. I have no desire to like go, certainly not to a bar or like anything that's loud and social anymore. But I think having things in our home, we have a big skylight calendar that's on our wall in our bathroom, in our master bathroom, and the girls can add things to their, so we are really careful with like double booking or we've got a daughter who takes voice lessons and she's involved in choir. And then we've got another one who plays basketball and she's also in choir. And we've got overlaps sometimes that we can't help. They're both heavily involved in church, which is a gift, but also sometimes becomes a chore. And I don't want to view it that way. So we are pretty sacred with like, hey, this is family time. This is, all bets are off on this day or whatever it is. And sometimes I get some looks from my children when I'm like, no, you can't have a friend spend the night. Because it is important to us to have that sort of core time together. And I know I feel it. I think my kids feel it. I can see it sometimes in their behavior. Like that, we just need to slow down. We need to rest. We need to take a few days off, whatever that is. So I don't know. I just have a natural inkling to make those choices. I'm not super concerned with keeping up with other people because that does not bring me joy. Yeah. And so I'm pretty. If it doesn't bring me joy, I cannot be consumed with it.
Right. How do you think, I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday that also is in the season like me with a 12-year-old, but she has a daughter. And so we're always comparing notes. And I think that for anyone with teenagers in their house, the teenagers don't always get excited to have the family time.
Correct.
Actually, ever. But I feel like they don't know yet how to self-regulate. Yeah. And so it is, I remember my parents doing it. I think it's a good thing.
I had a phone curfew. I wasn't allowed to be, talking to my friends on the phone after a certain time. And this was before cell phones for sure. We had busy signals. We didn't even have a call waiting. And so I would get in trouble often because I was on the phone and somebody couldn't get through. And my kids certainly have those, not necessarily sneaky behaviors, but like they're trying to get away with something that they know isn't something that we would choose for them. But our kids actually seem to really like us. They, for now, they do enjoy their friends. But I've just started watching Gilmore Girls with my girls, which is has been a lot of fun. And my husband's a good sport. He'll sit there and watch it with us. But I think even it doesn't have to be necessarily hands-on like family time to be considered, beneficial to the family. We play a lot of board games. They still seem to really like those things. We held off on devices for a really long time. I think that has helped. My 13-year-old does have a phone, but she doesn't have access to any social media or anything. She does see things that her friends, pull up, and I'm like, how did you hear about that brand? Or what do you, how do you know these things? But I do think at the heart of it, we have always valued family time. And so they still like it for now. Yeah. I don't look for that to be, I know my husband has said sometimes when I was your age, my parents had to like holler at me to, come inside to be near them. I'm like, I know, but isn't it kind of a gift that they do want to be around us?
Yeah.
So
it is. And it's something that you're instilling in them. Like it's a rhythm that you guys are wanting to show them is important. Yeah. So that we slow down, that we are together, and really, whether they see it this way or not, like you're showing them like we're recharging. We're kind of shutting out everyone else and we're coming together as a family. Yeah. And I think that that's cool for you guys to teach them how to have those healthy boundaries because most teenagers and even adults, we don't always know how to self-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us don't even know, like, I don't know, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? And
Right.
and sometimes that means, a lot of times people think that just means like an introvert is quiet,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not always the case.
Or antisocial.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Not at all. It
No.
can also mean, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it can mean how you refuel.
Yes.
Because I can be very extroverted, but I also love to be at my house by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like have to have days. And I never used to give myself that parameter.
No, because if you're slowing down, you're a failure.
Yes.
You're wasting time.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Yes, because I had so been ingrained that like I must be busy. I was like, if I don't have a 10 o'clock, a 2 o'clock, a 3 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, like I was
You're wasting the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now I'm relearning these patterns of like, I just can't run at that capacity anymore.
Yeah. And I've always been that way too. I'm very efficient. Even my husband came home yesterday, like half day, and I'm off on Mondays, and it threw me. I was like, I had a plan for the day, and he's like, I just thought we could hang out. And I'm like, I love that for us. I need a minute because because in my head, I was going to get X, Y, and Z done. And then I was going to enjoy the day, or I was going to do, so I still struggle with wasting time. I still have a hard time sitting, which is actually why I started crocheting in the first place.
Yeah.
If I'm jumping, you can
do
tell me, but so we have some ADD in our family, and the longer, when my stepson got tested when he was like in 4th grade, we were going through the testing process, and I was like looking at my husband going, this might be you too. And, the person who was doing the testing was so gracious and kind. And she was like, But now the further that I've gotten into this, I think I have it as well, in the sense that my mind is going 100 different directions. I mask it better because I'm pretty organized. So whereas, you walk into a room and you forget why you walked in there, that's a pretty normal, typical behavior. But, I can have running to-do lists in my brain that have nothing to do with one another. And I might have 10 or 12 lists going at once, and I can manage it all. And I don't see that in my house as much. So a lot of things I'm like, yeah, but I was already in the kitchen. So I just went ahead and did X, Y, and Z so I can check it off my list. So when I started to crochet, it was because my husband and I would sit down to watch a show at night, and I would be scrolling on my phone. And not that he cares as far as like, oh, I really want you to see this show. It was a show that we were both watching. It didn't need my full attention. It wasn't even, I could tell you exactly what was going on in the show.
You were hearing it.
I could hear it, but then I'd catch myself watching a reel or, and then before I know it, my screen time was probably through the roof because I could focus on that and I could focus on this. And so I was like, I need something to do with my hands. That's what it is. So at the beginning of this year, we all decided that we were going to pick a goal. So my husband was going to learn to play the banjo. Meryl was going to learn how to play guitar. Corinne was going to practice her vocals and piano. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to crochet. So I did. I mean, YouTube, I went and bought some really cheap yarn. I don't know what kind of yarn to buy. Do I get skinny yarn? Do I get fat yarn? I've never seen this yarn before. I don't know anything about this. So I just went and I started practicing some stitches and learning granny squares. And my youngest, who still loves Barbies, got so many Barbie quilts and rugs because I had the ugliest granny squares you've ever seen in your life. And they were wonky and, and it was great because, and then I would show my husband and be like, great job. So supportive, but also I was crocheting some things that needed some work. But anyhow, that was the original. My grandma never did, but her sister crocheted, and I have some Afghans that were my great grandma's, and my great aunt tried to teach me how to crochet years and years ago, and I didn't have the patience. I was in college. I was like, I'm not interested in this. But it's fascinating now to me how I can, I'm watching the show and I'm doing, something with my hands. I'm on my phone so much less. Now, sometimes my phone is there because I'm looking at like a tutorial or a pattern or something like that, but I'm not watching it. And so I can, crochet a blanket over the course of a week or so while we're watching a show. And I feel like this is efficiency, right? This
Getting
is
something done.
Check that off my list. This is I'm spending time with my husband. I'm spending quality time with my kids. I'm, doing whatever, but I'm also making something for somebody or, so that was where the crocheting kind of originated was I needed to get off my phone but I also recognized that I needed to do something with my hands. And I've always done, bread is also with my hands. I've just done that for a lot longer, but this crocheting was kind of a new thing where I was just like, I physically need to be doing something because I can't pay attention to the TV if I'm just sitting here.
Right.
That's when I'm reaching for my phone or snacks or, whatever else. So if I'm keeping my hands busy in another way.
And it's got to be soothing and calming.
I love it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was really frustrating.
Well, yeah.
But even an ugly granny square for me was like, I made that. And Meryl was happy as a clam. Oh, can I have that for my Barbie? Can that be my Barbie shawl? Sure. Whatever makes you happy.
See, I am fascinated and appreciative of my sister. My sister is really good at all that. But I'm always like, I can't even braid hair. I'm very intimidated, but I see the value in it now where you have something to do with your hands while you're sitting, even for I talked to a lot of friends about silent retreats and silent practices, and people are like, what in the world would I do during that time? And so I feel like that's a beautiful thing to learn how to do.
Yeah.
And women were doing it so many years before us when they didn't have all the distractions. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in just being able to sit around.
And it doesn't have to be fancy. The Afghans that I have that my great grandma made were all the same stitch, the entire blanket, all the same color. There was nothing, and now they're terribly scratchy and, yarns come a long way, but it doesn't have to be anything that is just magnificent. Right. It can just be something very simple.
And it's something that you made. I think that anytime anything is handmade, it's worth so much more.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
It's made from a friend with love. So whether it's that or whether it's cookies or bread, it's such a cool thing that we've kind of gotten away from in life. But I think that it is coming back. Like you and I were talking about, especially for December too, how can we go against the grain of culture? Which is really what I'm always trying to do is pressing against that with the whole podcast, encouraging everyone to slow down, to say no more, to not having to keep up with everyone. The things that Jesus really did teach, how can we be walking more with him and in sync with that? And so, even for this month, what are some of the things that we can do to lean into some of the quieter.
I was always amazed by my friends who did the whole Christmas gift of it was something to wear, something to read, something. It was 4 things. I don't even remember what they were. And I was like, how do you do that? How can you just break it down that? We, I think, are fortunate too that our kids are finally old enough that it's we're going to go do an experience. We're going on a trip. We're going to. Last year, they asked for tickets to go see, something at the Orpheum from my parents. And I'm like, I'm all for that because it's an experience. It's live theater. They both are really interested in that kind of stuff. I'd much rather my parents spend money on tickets or dinner or something like that than junk that I'm going to step over or throw away or sweep up or, so they have gotten to the age too, where I think they genuinely understand that more. When you were talking about saying no, I think for so long saying no was a sign of weakness. And I think finally people are like, oh, I can.
It's okay.
I can say no. And I think as women, we got a bad rap if we said no. We were considered difficult to deal with or ungenerous or whatever the word, whatever the adjective is. No was derogatory.
Right.
And I think that in the last 5, maybe 10 years, women have kind of been like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say I'm at capacity and I can't do that.
Yep.
I can't bring my best self to that situation, or I can't or maybe another time, or, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, but I do think the freedom to just be like, that's just not in my wheelhouse right now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in a different season, I'll be here for that,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, whatever it is. I think kind of taking that power back and just being like, no is not necessarily negative.
Mm-mm.
It's just, it's something that I can't commit to right now.
Right.
Whatever. And like right now I can't commit to a Bible study, and I hate that for myself, but also I don't ever want to join a Bible study where I am resentful of that time, because it's one more thing that I've got to fit in. And that's not how I want to spend my time reading the word. I don't want to go to a Bible study because I have to check it off the list. I would much rather, I don't know. There's so much value in it. I don't mean it like that. I just, right now I can't do it.
Yeah.
And if I signed up for it or committed to it, I wouldn't be bringing my best self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's okay. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to revisit that in a year or the next semester or whatever that looks like.
Right.
So
there are seasons, right, where like we're feeling dry, or like we just need to have that community to point us that way. But then there are other seasons where like the best yes is me sitting at home in the word, just me and Jesus, and that's okay. And I think, and maybe it's just me and kind of everybody's been hearing me say no for so many years, but like for the longest time I didn't say no. And so now I really feel like no is so much more empowering. Because my counselor, many hundreds of dollars spent on it, was like, Cherisse, no is a complete sentence. I'm like,
no explanation needed. Yes.
It's so hard.
I've heard the same thing.
Yes. And I will text it out, you know, just write no. And then I explain it. And then I've like, delete. I have to back it up, because she's like, you do not owe an explanation. You don't owe it to anyone.
And even like with my kids, I've learned to just say no. I always tried to explain. Let me explain, you know, Daddy's got this, or I've got this. But then it just gave them footing to argue.
That's what my counselor said. She was
so
like,
I'd say, no, Daddy's got to do this. But if Daddy does this first, I'm like, no. Sorry, that's my fault. I should have just said no. The answer is no.
Right. Yes.
I love you.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Right now we know why our parents were like, I said no. Why? Because I said so. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, on our end, it's good for us to remember that. It's okay to say no, and that's a complete sentence. But then on the receiving end of it, when we have a friend that is bold enough and brave enough to say no, to respect that no, and to give grace and to love them, and not think, oh no, does she not like me? Is something wrong? Absolutely not. Like that was such a brave thing for her to be okay to say no. And that we like elevate her on her for her no. You know?
I think we just have to change the dialogue. I think it's just, it has become so, well, why not? Why can't you, if we did it on a different day, would you, you know, like, please don't move anything around for me. Please don't.
Right.
It's a no.
Yes.
Yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
And maybe even in this holiday season, if a friend does say no, we're like, go girl. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for your no. And just like, love it.
We have Wednesday night dinners at church. And a couple weeks ago, some friends were saying, hey, to another friend at the dinner table, hey, we missed you last night. She was like, oh my gosh, I was coming, but my sitter was running late. I mean, you know, it was something. And I was like, I noticed nobody said they missed me, you know, just being snarky. And they were like, we knew you weren't going to come. And I was like, thank you. I mean, but they do. They know that I have firm boundaries with like, a lot of people that I don't know. No, thank you. I won't. I will be here for you because I love you, but I can't. I can't be around 15 or 20 other women that I don't know, or men. I mean, it doesn't matter. I just, that is physically draining to me. And so, you know, they tease me about it, but it's all in good fun because it is a badge that I will wear. Yeah. You know,
well, and it's that self-awareness. Like, you know, if you said yes out of obligation to that, you would be showing up not really wanting to be there.
Right.
It would not be something that fuels your soul. So you'd end up more drained. And you're like, I should just said no in the first place.
I also get anxious leading up to it. And then if I come home and I'm drained, then I'm not giving my best self to my kids.
Yes.
We had a small group leader years ago who said he was volunteering. He had this like group of kids that he was mentoring and all this stuff. And someone told him, he said, just don't forget that your biggest ministry is inside your home. And if you're giving your best self to all of these, and nothing wrong with what you're doing all of these great things, but your wife and your kids need you to be, your best self for the most part.
Yeah.
And if you're giving everybody else first dibs, it's natural. You're going to be drained, and your wife is not going to get the best version of you. Your kids are not going to get the best version of you. So just keep in mind that your greatest ministry is inside these four walls. And if you can't fulfill those obligations and fill those cups, then, you're spending all this time in the world, but your kids need you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think about that too, because I only have the capacity for so much. And so if my kids are getting the short end of the stick because I chose to go to a girls' night, that's not. And some people can do it all. Not all, but like some people love that. They want it. They thrive in the girls' night environment. They're better moms because of it. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's like, we all have to know, like, if I've had so much alone time, then I need that time with my friends to refuel me. Or if I've had a lot of time where I'm giving out, then I need to be home with my family. And so, but we all have to know that. And that's our own work that we all have to do.
Yeah.
Like no one can do it for us. We all have to, quote, do our work so that we can know what refuels me, what recharges me, what do I need to say yes to, and what do I need to say no to.
Yes.
But I love that. And I had heard that. Well, maybe I didn't hear it for a while, but when I did hear it, I was super convicted because I was 100% giving all my friends, all my clients, always the best of me.
Sure.
And then I would get home, and we lived an hour and a half away for so long. So an hour and a half to Memphis, an hour and a half home. I'd get home at 10 o'clock at night, and I had nothing. Like all my words had been used. I was done. And so it was a lot of time of giving my scraps.
Yeah.
But I really thought like that was just what you did.
Yeah.
Until I was like, oh, I guess that doesn't make sense. Like my husband doesn't want to see me crabby and worn out because I've talked to everyone else all day.
Yeah. And it just changes the dynamic when you start prioritizing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And knowing like, especially for our kids, like when we're in, for me, like this season of 12 and Drew's almost 13 and 6, you feel like they're going to be here forever.
Yeah.
But they're not. Like we counted up this year, Drew has 5 more summers with us. What?
Yeah.
5. And we're like, wow. And then my friends have told me that for years, Cherisse, it's not going to be forever.
Right.
And so remembering like this season of no won't last forever because he'll be out of the house. So I love that. Okay. Now I want to go back.
Okay.
There's a part in your story that I did not know this. Okay. And this is really cool. As far as like, there was a moment in your life, you said, where God captured your heart. And one of the things in your story, my friend Nancy Holcomb was here. She was here a couple weeks ago.
And she has no idea who I am, and that's okay. But she made a huge impact on my life. And what's so funny is, my parents moved my senior year of high school. I'll just fast forward through this. Oh. So I stayed here for college. Didn't really go to church in college. I knew I didn't want to continue going to the church that I went to with my parents in high school. And I think I just was like, it just wasn't a priority. I mean, and I think a lot of people can say that in college.
Yeah.
And then when I started teaching at PDS, I was like, I have a big girl job. No, I had a job teaching before that, but I think it wasn't until PDS. So it was my second year teaching.
Okay.
I was like, I really need to get back in the church. And, PDS is tied to Second Pres. I had gone to Second Pres several times. We had like PDS Sundays and things, and it just wasn't for me. I knew that. But I'd talked to a couple people that I worked with, and they were like, you need to go to Fellowship Memphis. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll go. So I went a couple times and loved it. I mean, immediately. And it was a new up and coming church. There wasn't, I didn't care at the time. This is terrible. They didn't have like a huge like children's ministry or anything like that. It was a lot of people my age, which was great.
Yeah.
And the total opposite of like Second Pres, which was like very traditional family, structure. So there were tons of people my age, and I don't remember how I heard about it, but the Holcombs had a Tuesday. I think it was one Tuesday a month. They had dinner at their house and just fellowship. There was nothing formal. There was no like official Bible study. I do remember he Hamp would like say a prayer, and like there were definitely things that were discussed, but it was really more just about like meeting like-minded people or just like being loved on. I mean, my parents were in Vegas. Hamp and Nancy were like my parents' age. I mean, I just felt like, oh, this is really cool. And I brought friends every once in a while. Like, I did it for a while. And I just remember that was like the first moment that I was like, I'm doing this thing. And I feel like I'm getting kind of religion back in my life. I mean, I was a preacher's kid. So church was always on the table. I just, I feel like that was the first decision, like as an adult, that I was like, okay, I'm getting back in the church, and I loved it. And they were just so kind, and they were kind of hip, and like I don't know. I don't know how to describe them other than that. And that was exactly what I needed at that point. They were just great people. And then when Terry and I got married, he was actually going to High Point and I was going to fellowship. And neither one of them served the needs that we had, because I married a man with a child with special needs. And both of those, being very young churches, had no program for special needs. And so that's when we kind of started church shopping again. And that's how we ended up at Hope.
Okay.
And we've been there ever since. And I was devastated to leave fellowship. And he loved High Point.
Yeah.
And we, it was, they both filled our cup for that period of our life.
Yeah.
And then it came that the kids needed something different. And so we started kind of not from zero, but we knew that Second had a really big special needs ministry, and that Hope had a big one too.
Right.
And so I had already gone to Second. So that's when we started visiting Hope.
That's really cool. I
Yeah.
did not know that story.
Yeah.
And Nancy, I think, had shared it either on the podcast or she was just telling me about that, because we were talking about obedience. And that was kind of one of the questions I asked you too. And Nancy was like, I just remember this one time when God was like, I just need you to open up your house. And she's like, I don't really like to cook. I don't like to cook, but I love to have people. And she said, we just decided we were going to open up our doors and we weren't going to have an agenda. It was just, we were going to have fun. We were going to share food. And so when you wrote that, I was like, what? Because I'd heard the backstory to it.
And when I can't remember how Braxton Brady was a good friend of mine. He was the one who took me to fellowship. Because he was at PDS with me, and he was the one, maybe he told me about that. I have no idea how I found out about it, but I remember the introvert in me pulling up to their house going, I don't know a single person in there. This is really outside of my comfort zone. But something was just, it was compelling. I don't know. It was God for sure, because I wouldn't even driving here today. I'm like, oh, this is not where I've been before. I mean, just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but yes, I went and I loved it. And it was a huge moment in shaping like my adult version of my faith.
Yeah. Where it really became yours.
Yes.
You sought it out for yourself.
Yes.
It wasn't your parents and what they wanted you to do.
Correct.
This was you. And it's cool how something that Nancy and Hamp had no idea why they were doing this.
No.
And they were like, we're just going to walk
in. And I bet
obedience.
they don't know a ton of those adults now names.
Right.
I mean, it was people were coming and going, and they were like, hey, good to see you. I mean, I'm sure they knew some of their names. I don't mean it like that, but I think that the turnover rate was probably like, people would come once or twice and then maybe they would go somewhere else or,
but isn't that so true anytime? When we're doing something that makes zero sense and we're like, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. And then we see the fruit of it later. And so that's why that was really sweet when I read it. I texted Allison. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have tears in my eyes. And she's like, what are you talking about, Cherisse? But I love even where you said that. And then when in one of your other questions where you talked about, I said, have you seen obedience in one area lead to another area? And with your journey through going to school, well, first for nursing, which I did not know that you did that. And then you decided to go for education and then special education. And then to see how God linked that with Terry.
And that did not even occur to me until another coworker of mine at PDS kind of laid it out on the table for me. Like, are you not seeing this? My mom was a teacher. My grandma was a teacher. I was not going to be a teacher.
Right. You're like, nope.
Yep. And I really wanted to be a nurse. And I got into my third year of school, and it was like we were starting to do like I mean, it was nothing clinical at that point, but there was blood, and ER was still a big show at the time. And I was watching ER and I was getting squeamish, and I was like, this is probably not something that I need to be pursuing. And I went to my guidance counselor, and he had me take this. It wasn't the MMPI, but it was some sort of like inventory of like what you should do with your life kind of thing. And he was like, what are your interests? I was like, anything but teaching, anything but teaching, anything but teaching. And he just laughed. He just laughed at me. So it turned out that more of my credits transferred to a special education. This is what's so funny is it was a dual license. So I still had my elementary ed license and special ed. So I was really getting more bang for my buck in a way, but more of it transferred. I only had to do one more year of college if I went extra year. So I went for 5 years. If I changed my major to special ed as opposed to just elementary ed, I was going to have probably another 18 months added on. And I didn't care. I mean, okay, I can teach elementary school. And it wasn't that I didn't want to teach special ed. I didn't want to burn out. And so I knew that that was not what I wanted to do initially. So I got my first teaching job at Macon Hall and loved it. I taught third grade, and then switched to PDS. And my husband and I kind of have a very whirlwind, very short. We knew each other 6 weeks before we got married. But I started teaching at PDS in 2009, and we were married. I didn't even know him in August, and we were married in December. And he had a daughter with special needs. And I was telling my friend Dabney at the time, I was like, isn't this kind of crazy? And she goes, honey, that's not crazy. That's God. She was like, that is that moment of like, I had never met him. He was not on the horizon. It wasn't like I was dating somebody who had a child with special needs. And it was, and still to this day, I mean, I used it for sure in the classroom. Absolutely. I used my special education degree, but being an advocate for her in those IEP meetings, and now for my own kids, being an advocate for my child in the 504 meetings, all of this information that I would have not probably known or not known as well. But I had to learn it because it was, the easiest way to get out of college, has come back so many times. And like, I actually do know that, or and so it's been amazing in that sense. And now I don't even teach anymore in the capacity of like the classroom, but it was Dabney who was like, honey, that's not crazy. That's God. And I remember just like feeling like a hot flash, almost like I was like, I might cry. I'm not typically that way. My parents have always been like, just be really careful, because if you can attribute everything to God, you can also blame God for everything. And there's this fine line of like, oh, well, that was a God thing. Well, okay, but if you were drinking and driving, that's not a God thing. Or if you were, you made the choice to drop out of college and make poor choices, that you can't blame God for the things that you would maybe attribute him. And so it's kind of a catch-22. So I've always been a little on the conservative side of just being like, oh, that's a God thing. But there are definitely things in my life that I'm like, there's no way. Right. There's no way that it was anything other than that, because I couldn't see past the end of my nose at that point. Yeah. I was just like, get me out of college. I don't want to be here another year. And if this is the way, then this is the way. Never knowing that, that was going to be something that I would really lean into, not, 2 years later. So...
Well, and so many times I've had friends sitting here and we're talking about like the seasons of the unknown. And we're like, we don't know. We all wish we knew what was coming ahead, but we just are going to continue being faithful with what we have today. And that's really what you were doing. You're like, I know I want to get out of school. Yeah. I'm just going to be faithful in this, not knowing what's to come. And then the Lord was like, oh, I have something for you. Yeah. And it's coming and it's going to be great. And so that's really cool to see. You're like, all right, I can just be obedient today. Sure. I can walk in this. And this is where it's going to be. Yeah. That's really cool.
It is cool.
I did not know that you taught at PDS. I didn't know anything about nursing. And I didn't know that.
Yeah. I loved my time teaching. I gave that up when we started the food truck. because our kids were still young and at home, and there was no way we could do it. We could do it.
But now
well.
it like kind of is coming full circle. I'm skipping all around here, but because now with the bakery, like you are leading classes and like you're teaching bread baking classes and other things like cake decorating.
Yeah. It is fun to kind of use that gift in a different way. Cause I loved teaching. There were certain elements that I didn't, the paperwork and the politics and all the things that people probably don't like about corporate jobs. Like there's certain, like, I'm sure there are certain things that they love and then certain things that they could do without. I loved teaching and I hated to give it up. And I was good at it. I mean, I walked into the classroom and I felt really good at the end of every day. Like I made a connection today, or I, saw a light bulb moment. There were things that I definitely, and then switching and staying home with 2 young kids, and the checklist is never done and the work is never complete and nobody's ever coming behind you saying, hey, great lesson. No. So it is kind of fun to incorporate all the things that I love about teaching, the actual teaching part, and, have it marry something else that I love, which is, I mean, I love cake decorating and I love, but people are craving sourdough these days. Yes. And so they want to know how to make it. And I love teaching it. It has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And how often do you guys do that?
A lot more in the fall and the winter. Okay. Nobody really wants their oven on
in July.
And they're thinking about their swimsuit bodies. They're not thinking about comfort food.
Right.
I think last year we did more than 20 classes in the fall and the winter. And we would post them and they would sell out immediately. And I think some of that craving came from COVID time. People were stuck at home and they were craving something to do with their hands. And I think there were a lot of women, I have had a few men come too, but a lot of women who've come to the class and said, oh, I tried to do this during COVID and I failed, or, whatever. And so it's fun. And then they'll send emails with pictures months later. Like, oh, here's my starter's still thriving, or they all come with funny names for their sourdough starter. And it's fun. It's fun to watch them, on social media. They'll post things and sometimes they'll tag us in it still. And I don't know. It's fun to kind of watch that all started from a starter that I made. And so it's like out in the world. I don't know.
From one thing. Yeah. It always comes. And in case everybody, if they're not following you, they can follow you on Small Cakes. Yeah. Small Cake Collierville?
Yeah. It's Small Cakes Collierville on social media and on the website. And then the email address is smallcakes901@gmail. But yes, it's Small Cakes Collierville across the board.
And then I'll put your Instagram on here too, because I always love personally following you, because Allison always posts like these really cool like cocktails or like your garden. When you in the summer, you always post fun things about your garden, and of course your cakes. I've been following you with your cakes forever, even before you were at Small Cakes. Yeah. I remember specifically, I don't remember, maybe it was during COVID. You made me a cake.
Okay.
It was like a chocolate peanut butter amazingness cake.
Okay.
I didn't even know you were bringing it over to me for my birthday.
Oh, I remember this.
Yes, it was at the old house. You brought it over, and I was like, Allison, you have got to start making cakes for everyone. You're like, no, I just do it for friends.
I was also always afraid that I wouldn't love it. Like if it became a job, well, then is it fun anymore? For me, it had to be one or the other. And so and COVID kind of accelerated that, because people were, the bakeries were either closing or they had shortened hours or they couldn't do a big event like they wanted to. They just needed a small, something. And so that was sort of the dawning of baking for other people out of my house. But then like during COVID, we did meal kits and stuff. We realized pretty quickly that we have a lot of friends who don't cook.
I remember picking up so much soup from you, because remember you guys were selling tomato soup.
We did soup. We did barbecue. My husband has a huge smoker. Yeah. We did pizza kits. Yeah. We did all kinds of stuff. And, necessity breeds ingenuity, right? So we didn't have the food truck because nothing was happening during COVID. Yeah. And it became apparent pretty quickly that, people were doing like to-go orders, but you couldn't eat in a restaurant. And we realized very quickly that we had so many friends that never cook. And so we were doing like casseroles and all kinds of fun stuff. And it was giving us something to do at home, and it was a little bit of revenue, and it was great. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I was on the receiving end. Yeah. So it was very fun to me.
Yeah.
I'd come get all my soups. Yeah. It was very good. Yeah. I love that. So during COVID, and that's kind of also how the bakery got born. And really, I think that even in that season, I know we're kind of 5 years out of COVID, but I think that this season of slowing down and learning to bake, and I say that because like I have this craving to like want to cook and stuff. Like I have the cookbooks out.
You cook?
I know, not really.
Yes, you do.
I'm like, ooh, I want to. And then I look at the recipes and they look amazing.
A lot of
It's a lot of work. So I'm like, well, darn, maybe once a week. But you did say that. We'll tell them that at the end.
Yeah.
But I'm like, there's that craving inside, that yearning of, I do want slow. I want quiet. And I think a lot of women and men do want that for themselves and for their family.
Yeah. But you got to let yourself do it. I mean, you've got to give yourself
space.
Yes. And the time to just be like, it's okay if I'm, if I rest, the garden started, I mean, we had a little garden before COVID, but then it just became its own monster. And then it was like, I was starting things from seed, and then I would grow things for neighbors, and I would, I think everybody got a little preppy. Like they were like, we're prepping for the end of the world. So I'm like, and then we have a freeze dryer. And so we were going to like have all these meals that were ready just in case. And I mean that we have chickens, we have 10 chickens. So we have our own little property that we have a generator. People all the time are like,
coming to your house. When my power
coming
goes
over.
out.
I'm like, okay, come on. But yes, we do. We both Terry and I have, we recognize the importance of slowing down.
One of the things you said in here, I'm watching my time and there's so many things that I still want to talk about. One of the things you said in here was a really cool story from Brene Brown.
Oh yeah. Have you heard that story?
No, I had not. So tell me a little bit about it.
Okay. So she tells the story that it was like the dawning of the personal washer and dryer, right? So all of these families were so excited to have women freed up to do something else, right? Because now this washing machine was going to do all the work for you. And they saw within months that women were having issues that they couldn't really pinpoint. They're like, wait a minute, we've got this great washer and dryer in our house now. Like everything should be happy, right? We've got all these cool appliances.
Oh, yes.
But they found out quickly that women were missing the community from going to the river to do their laundry, because that was the time that women would gossip or, compare notes or
solve the world's problems.
Yes. And it had become such a therapeutic thing. Nobody realized that by bringing in this washer and dryer, which was going to solve all your problems, right, that it was actually going to create problems. And they attribute, depression and loneliness and isolation because these women were not in this community of doing laundry together, which is silly when we think about now. We've never known a life outside of having our own washer and dryer, but it makes sense because we do crave, even the introverts crave community.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I went to Costco yesterday, and we were talking about this because they now have a scanner. You don't even have to, there's no greeter at the door anymore. They have a scanner.
Oh.
And already, they've got self-checkout at all these places. And when you call, you can't get anybody on customer service. And I mean, I hate to be one of those like back in my day people, but at what length do we go to eliminate human interaction? Like I understand that it's more efficient or it's cost effective or whatever, but Hope before COVID had a streaming platform where they had, I don't know, roughly, I think it was like 200 members maybe every Sunday that would listen to the service. Well, now it's like, 3,500 a weekend. And it's like, okay, it's a gift that you can worship from home. Maybe you're homebound, maybe you're ill, maybe you've moved out of town and you still have a connection to your home church. But also if it's not the exception and it becomes the norm, what else are you missing? Yeah. Are you missing the coffee bar at your church? Are you missing catching up with some girl you went to college with that you haven't seen? And I mean, I had a friend come up to me. My daughter sang on the front line at church last week. And I had a friend that I worked with in high school who came up to me and was like, oh my gosh, I know your mama heart is just like exploding. I wouldn't see her on a regular basis. I mean, we are friends, but we don't connect regularly at all. And I think about those moments where she and I were kids together. We were in high school together. And now we have kids who are, it's just, I don't know. I feel like as someone who does crave quiet time and not isolation, but definitely my time alone, I see it as like, where is society going with this? When are we going to take a minute and say, you know what, our human interaction is lacking. Yeah. My kids don't even know how to talk on the phone. I'm like, you say, hi, this is so-and-so. And they're like, hey. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
We're missing things, I think.
Right. Everything in culture is like to help us be more efficient. And it's actually pulling us apart from that. Yeah. I love what you had said in here in our last couple minutes here. I keep looking up there at the clock. Where I asked you, what would you tell your 10-year-old self? Like I ask everyone, and even, say that.
What I would tell myself?
Yeah. What was your advice?
I know I wrote two things. I know one of them is my whole thing is you have freedom to change your mind. You have freedom to learn. You have freedom so my big thing lately has been, you need to learn, you need to unlearn, and then you need to relearn. I think there are so many things that we were taught as kids, and maybe they had a purpose then, but they don't serve our life now. And it's okay to be different from your parents. It's okay to be different from your neighbor, especially in this political season where we're in December now, but I think this whole, like, you're different from me, so now that's an issue. No. I mean, I think that if you can learn something, you can unlearn it and you can relearn it. And I think exposure to people who are different from you, exposure to situations that are different from your everyday norm. I mean, even me being here, this is not something that I'm ever going to do with my life, but I love it for you. And I think that it's okay for us to change our mind. It's okay for me to believe something different than I believed 10 years ago. And I think that there are so many things that, I was going to be an astronaut at one point. I was going to be a brain surgeon. I'm like, whoo, dodged a bullet there. You do not want me operating on your brain. I mean, we forgive ourselves for changing our mind about that kind of stuff, but it's like something that, I can't even think of an example, but I just think it's really important that's why I call myself kind of a quiet pursuer. If I want to learn more about something, I'm just going to go seek that out. And maybe I find an expert. Maybe I talk to a friend who I know believes a certain thing or feels a certain way. I love reading books that challenge me. I love being exposed to things that make me see things from a different perspective. I mean, I can only see things from my perspective. I became a different teacher when I became a mom. I'm a different person for having a blended family. I am so much better for having my husband. Like there are just so many things that I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to have kids, and here I am. So I think it's important to just allow yourself to be like, all right, I'll bite. Tell me about that. Whatever that is, because if we are stuck in the same kind of rut that we were when we were 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40, we're not growing.
No. Right.
And I think that's the goal is for me to grow. I want to learn things from my kids. I want to learn things from my coworkers. I want to, be exposed to all of these things that are going to make me come to the table differently. I love it. Thank you.
I love it. It's okay to change your mind. Be open to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, y'all. Well, in our last 30 seconds, I love what you said when I asked you, Allison, what would you want to leave everyone with? You said, I want people to slow down, take time to pursue something new. It doesn't have to be big. Keep a plant alive, make dinner from scratch once a month, read a chapter of a book each week or every day. Find something to do with your hands. And that you said you have found so much joy in learning new things and slowing down to take time to do them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there couldn't be a more perfect message to usher us into December. So thank you for being here and sharing your heart and your gifts. I appreciate you.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm so excited for this podcast because I think it's just got so much to offer. And it doesn't matter. I was listening to, I told you, the sassy stickers, I think.
Yes.
Addie. And I just I would never know her. I don't know her. I will probably never meet her. And there were just so many things she was talking about at one point, like how COVID was kind of a blessing in her life because, and it wasn't ours too. Our kids were a good age. We got to just kind of stop and spend time together and walk up and down our street and jump rope and hopscotch and, do all kinds of things. And I think, for us in our family, it was a glimpse in this is better. This is COVID aside. I cannot make, and so many people's lives were turned upside down by COVID, but just for us, it was a moment where we were just like, this is what we want the picture of our home to be like. This is what we want our kids to remember.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it forced us all to slow down. So
I love it. Well, thank you, ma'am, for leaving us with those words.
Thank you.
And for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this journey of restoration and renewal. Remember, you can stay connected with me between episodes by following me on Instagram. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. And if you found value in our conversation today, I'd truly appreciate it if you leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or share the show with a friend who might benefit from these rhythms. Until next time, may you find peace in knowing that you can show up every day simply as you are. And that is enough. Take care.